Do you know that Dave Kunst was the first person to walk around the world? However, during his journey, Dave used airplanes to cross the oceans. Even so, in his entire circumnavigation, he walked a total of 27,000 kilometers, even if it was done in separate segments. But today, we are not talking about Dave Kunst. The man we are about to discuss may be even more extraordinary than Dave. This person has committed himself to walking the longest continuous route on Earth entirely on foot. Yes, where our imagination ends, Carl Bushby's journey begins. Not 5,000 kilometers, not 10,000 kilometers, not even 25,000 kilometers. Amazingly, Carl Bushby has already walked more than 47,000 kilometers on his own feet. And what is even more astonishing is that his journey is still not over. 25 countries, 6 deserts, 7 mountain ranges, 27 years of time, one single mission, to walk around the entire world, on foot, without any support. But how? Carl Bushby, an ex-paratrooper from England, made the bold decision to attempt the world's longest walking route. On the 1st of November 1998, with just $500 in his pocket, he began his journey from Punta Arenas, a city located at the southern tip of Chile. Carl named this mission the Goliath Expedition. The plan was simple in theory. He would walk across the entire American continent, reach Russia, then continue through Asia, and finally return home to England. The total planned distance was 58,000 kilometers. According to Carl's calculations, if he walked just 19 kilometers a day, the journey could be completed in 8 years. But the challenges he would face were beyond anything he had imagined. What was supposed to be an 8-year journey has now stretched beyond 27 years, and it is still ongoing. Carl Bushby set 2 strict rules for his expedition. The first rule was that no form of transportation would ever be used. No trains, no cars, no boats, no airplanes, and no motorized vehicles of any kind. Every step had to be taken on foot. The second rule was that if the journey ever stopped, it would resume from the exact point where the last step was taken. These rules may sound simple, but Carl paid their price through years of isolation, visa problems, and constant danger to his life. Carl's first steps were taken across the rugged landscapes of South America. Harsh weather, wild terrain, and challenges at every turn. He followed much of the Pacific coastline and the edges of the Andes Mountains to avoid the most dangerous parts of the Amazon rainforest. However, before reaching Central America, the climate and terrain became major obstacles. In Patagonia, Carl faced powerful freezing winds. In the Andes Mountains, the constant elevation changes turned every step into a battle. In northern Chile, he crossed the Atacama Desert, one of the driest and most lifeless places on Earth. Water scarcity and extreme daytime heat became his greatest enemies. For the first time, he was forced to carry more water than usual just to survive. Carl traveled with a small 2-wheeled pushcart carrying food, clothing, and essential supplies. He later said that while crossing the Atacama Desert, he only stopped walking when he found water. Crossing South America was a major milestone, but the true nightmare awaited him at the Darien Gap. A 320-kilometer stretch of dense jungle between Colombia and Panama, filled with venomous insects, deadly snakes, and armed guerrilla groups. At the Panama border, Carl was arrested by the authorities and spent 18 days in prison. After explaining his mission, he was released, and according to his rules, he restarted his journey from the exact point where it had stopped. Central America brought its own difficulties: multiple borders, visa issues, and long delays at entry and exit points. By 2002, Carl had crossed Central America and entered the United States. In the USA, he walked alongside long highways, dodging traffic, and crossed the scorching Sonoran Desert, which was even hotter than the Atacama. By 2005, he reached Canada and then Alaska, where the environment changed completely. In Alaska, extreme cold, heavy snowfall, and unforgiving terrain tested him to his limits. In remote areas with no roads, he sometimes followed dog sled trails, as the compressed snow made walking easier. However, he never accepted help from dogs because that would break his most important rule: no assistance of any kind. After Alaska came the most dangerous phase of the Goliath expedition, crossing the Bering Strait, the frozen sea connecting North America and Russia. The ice there never stays still. Ocean waves constantly shift massive ice plates, leaving open water between them. Carl was forced to jump from one moving ice slab to another, and many times he had to swim through freezing Arctic water, risking hypothermia and death. Carl crossed this section of the Bering Strait on foot with French adventurer Dmitry Kiefer. The 240-kilometer crossing took 14 sleepless days, battling Arctic storms. But when they finally reached Russia, Carl was immediately arrested. Even though he had a valid Russian visa, authorities claimed that the Bering Strait was not an official port of entry. Carl was deported back to the UK. This could have been the end of his journey, but by then, Carl had become a global figure. With intervention from British Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott and Russian billionaire Roman Abramovich, Carl was allowed to continue walking in Russia. Even then, the journey was far from easy. His visa was valid for only 90 days, forcing him to leave and re-enter repeatedly, sometimes waiting months. In 2008, his funding ran out completely, and he was forced to stop in Mexico for nearly 2 years. In 2011, after securing new funding, Carl returned to Russia and continued across Siberia. Walking over frozen tundra toward the Siberian coast, one small mistake could have cost him his life. Every year, he walked for 3 months and waited 9 months for visa approvals. In 2013, Carl received a devastating shock. Russia imposed a 5-year ban on him. But Carl refused to give up. Instead of staging a protest, he chose an extraordinary method. He walked 4,800 kilometers from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., and protested outside the Russian embassy. The media covered this unprecedented protest, and eventually, the 5-year ban was lifted. Carl returned to Siberia and resumed his journey from the exact GPS point where he had stopped. From Russia, he entered Mongolia and crossed the 1,130-kilometer Gobi Desert. He then continued through China into Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. Once again, his journey was halted, this time by visa issues with Iran. During the pandemic, Carl remained stuck in Turkmenistan for a long time. When his visa was denied again in 2022, Carl made a life-threatening decision. If he could not enter Iran, he would swim across the Caspian Sea to Azerbaijan. He used a small kayak, not to sit in, but only to carry his supplies. Carl swam 288 kilometers across the Caspian Sea in 31 days, swimming 6 hours daily, 3 hours in the morning and 3 in the evening. At night, he slept while holding onto the kayak. Powerful waves tried to stop him, but Carl did not break. He later said, "I don't enjoy swimming, but it was necessary." Eventually, he reached Azerbaijan and resumed walking. In 2025, Carl entered Turkey from Azerbaijan. By now, he had become so well known that people in villages and towns welcomed him into their homes. Speaking to the BBC, Carl said that he would never forget the hospitality of the Turkish people. In Istanbul, he crossed the Bosphorus Bridge, officially entering Europe. Although pedestrians are normally banned, authorities made a special exception for Carl. At that moment, he said, "When I left home, Tony Blair was Prime Minister. Now there have been 5 Prime Ministers. I believe when I return, my country will feel completely new." After 27 years of walking, Carl Bushby has just 3,000 kilometers remaining. His final route will take him through Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, Austria, Germany, and France before reaching the United Kingdom. However, one final challenge remains: the English Channel. Walking through the Channel Tunnel is strictly forbidden due to high-speed trains, extreme heat, and low oxygen levels. There is, however, a separate service tunnel used only for emergencies. To walk through it, Carl will need special permission. It is expected that Carl Bushby will take the final step of the Goliath expedition in 2026, reaching his hometown after walking 58,000 kilometers, 1.5 times the circumference of the Earth. Carl Bushby's journey proves one powerful truth: Humans create their own limits. In reality, there are none. So the next time you feel that life has come to a halt, remember this. Carl Bushby is still walking. The world may be vast, but it becomes small in front of human determination. As Carl once said, life never stops, only the path changes. We hope you enjoyed this video on Golden TV. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for your valuable comments.